right, it is now time for the original drag broad, as she calls herself. And this performer is a mix of Madeline Kahn and the sassy Mae West. And this is something that Muffy Fishbasket is used to because she's the founder of the Chicago Storytime with Drag Queens. And we featured her on the morning shift as part of our working shift series. So here she is, Muffy Fishbasket.
You obviously don't have many drag queens here. You do not block an aisle. Where you see an aisle, we see a runway. Okay, so first off, I have to start out. The first presenter, Anthony, are you still here?
He had to go.
Oh, he had to go, because I was going to say, backseat rider, really, honey? Let me tell you, there are a lot of people in my community that are really disappointed in your podcast. Ooh, okay. Okay, so I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. Yeah. Do I hear a woohoo? Like, I mean, really? It's like, that's just where you stop on your way to Detroit. I mean, come on now. So anyway, I'm gonna have some notes over here, so I'm just gonna pick them up and read them. So, all right, how's everybody doing tonight? All right. So, growing up in Toledo, Ohio, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. This is what happens. I became an altar boy so I could wear the pretty dresses. Yay. So anyway, I was never a strong reader, but it wasn't, and I was held back in the first grade. It wasn't until later, talking to my mom, she was like, oh yeah, you were held back because, there was this time that when you were learning to write in kindergarten and first grade, you'd write with your left hand, then get tired and switch to your right hand and then start writing backwards. So if you know anything about dyslexia, it's actually very hard to diagnose. There's many levels and very many names for it. So that was like, and in the 80s, it wasn't something, you'd go to class, you'd go to the special class, and you'd do vocabulary and all that stuff, but it wasn't anything that they were like, okay, let's really try and deal with this. So growing up, obviously, it wasn't easy. Fourth grade got really difficult. Mom was remarried. I was in a new school. We were living my stepdad's dream on a houseboat. That's another story for another time. So it was difficult. And of course, I was different. No, not in a dress different, but it was the 80s and the word fag was thrown out a lot. So one day, recess, fourth grade, it's raining. We had to stay inside. So I'm sitting by myself, trying to make myself as small as possible, trying to probably draw or something, and trying not to be noticed. But in turn, I noticed there was this boy sitting by himself, reading, but not in a conventional way. Like he was reading and then flipping through a book and then going backwards and going forwards. And so like my curiosity was piqued. So it caught my attention, and in a very uncommon move, I approached him. Now, Christopher Hamilton was not popular, but he wasn't unpopular. He had that rare mix of confidence, empathy, and self-deprecation that mixed correctly makes for the perfect class clown. So that was him. So I went up to say hello, and I asked what he was reading. And in response, he just smiled, and he said, "Choose your own adventure." Right. Not only just any choose your own adventure, the Vampire Express. Yes. So, does everybody know what choose your own adventure is? Okay. So, for those of you that don't know, it's broken up into, it starts out with a generalized story, and then it's broken up into choices that you make. For example, let's see. If you make Nina come with you to the engine, turn to page 88. If you agree to go back to the painting, turn to page 114. So, as you know, you're flipping back and forth. So that's what he was doing. So, if you've read them, you know that you make these choices, and the endings are either happy endings, kind of vague endings, or you die a horrible death. You know, perfect for grade school readers. That's great. Now, here's the kicker. He invited me to read with him. I started to sweat because reading cold was never a good thing. Like, I was that kid that it was like, when you knew you had to read a chapter, you were like counting down. Like, how many chapters or how many paragraphs until it gets to me, and I had to read it beforehand so that I could read out loud. So in that one instance, he became not only my tutor, but also my best friend. And it was one of those defining moments. Now, you might think that was what made it the most important book in my life, and you would be wrong. It was actually the series of the books. They taught me that reading could be fun. They taught me that it wasn't boring like school things. They taught me to make choices, right or wrong. Being someone else was a wonderful break from being you. True friends are patient and accepting. But most importantly, what they taught me, and I think everybody can take from this and these books, is that when page 73 results in your horrific demise, you can always go back to page 23 and just continue your story. So my epilogue to this is that I am still a very poor speller. I'm still a very slow reader. I still have to follow the lines of a book with my finger. I still stare at a page unable to comprehend what it says sometimes. Sometimes I have to read a children's book several times before presenting it at Storytime with Drag Queens. Check out my website, muffyfishbasket.com. But most importantly, that Christopher and I are still friends, and that I hope that he knows how important he was in my life. Thank you. I'm sorry. They asked me to make this announcement. The voting tonight is for most colorful hair. Vote Muffy!